Good morning. My name is Tammy, and I will be your conference call operator today. And I would like to take this time to welcome everybody to the Infrastructure Management Global Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. And at the end of the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And to withdraw your question, simply press the pound key. And now I would like to turn the call over to the Advisor Platform Engineering, Mr. Alquin Gayle. Mr. Gayle, you may begin your conference.
Thank you, Tammy. So we're here today to talk about how CA Technologies uses unified infrastructure management to simplify our operations. My name is Alquin Gayle. I've been with CA for about 18 years. I've used most, if not all, the infrastructure management products, starting with Unicenter T&G back in the late 90s, Spectrum, eHealth, Performance Manager, Virtual Assurance for IM, Server Automation, System Edge. I have experience with pretty much most of them. So let's talk about what we're going to look at from an agenda perspective. First, we're going to give you an overview of what CA's IT department does, what our challenges are, what our strategy looks like. We'll talk a little bit about our architecture. We'll talk about the use cases and key integrations that we use. We'll give you a brief demonstration. We'll talk a little bit about what we're looking to do in the coming years with UIM as well, what we accomplished in the last year, and also what we're going to accomplish in our next financial quarter or year starting in April. So let's get into it. So I work for CA's internal IT department. We have a name, GIS, which stands for Global Information Services. We cover pretty much everything from an IT perspective, including supporting all 14,000 CA users. We are a global 24/7 operations, and we have 6 core IT locations spread across the globe. We monitor 4,500 servers, 150 storage devices across switches and arrays, combined 3,000 routers, switches, and access points for wireless. Like most other companies, we take advantage of package solutions like SAP, Oracle, from IBM, like WebSphere. The big driver for us right now is trying to take as much advantage as possible with SaaS solutions. So Salesforce, Office 365, SumTotal, those are the kind of things that we're looking to do a lot more of. And we're also very aggressive in adopting cloud, specifically in the areas of Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. Like most other companies, we strive for excellence, so you'll notice that we have our ISO certifications. From an architecture perspective, we follow TOGAF. From a change perspective, we do ITIL, and we have SOX controls just like any other normal publicly traded company. So what are the drivers and challenges that we faced? Why did we make the decision to go with unified infrastructure management? One big driver, we had a lot of tools. We work for CA Technologies. We get a big discount on the tools, meaning we get them for free. So we have a tendency to deploy a lot of them. And that led to some confusion within our organizations, right? We have overlapping functionalities across the tool space. We also had duplication of effort, and that wasn't really delivering the value that we really needed to get from the tools. Not that there was anything wrong with the tools were great, but you ran into the situation where, because of the overlapping capabilities and the number of tools that there were, it resulted in some confusion with our consumers. So the whole point of deploying a solution is so that somebody can use it. If they don't know which one to use and when, it leads to confusion and a little bit of frustration. We also had drivers in being a cloud-first organization. So we wanted to make sure, as I talked about earlier in the introduction slide, that the things that we were doing were cloud-first, whether we could adopt SaaS or infrastructure as a service. We wanted to be able to do that and be able to monitor our efforts in those departments. And some of the existing tools didn't really do that very well. Like any other company and IT department, we have budget restrictions. The solution might be free, but we still have to put the effort in to do the deployment, to do the configuration, and to configure the monitoring to the specifications that we need. And we didn't feel as if we were achieving the objectives with the vast array of tools we had. We felt that we were spending more time doing the maintenance of the tools, the upgrades, the patching, all the other things that we were doing rather than delivering use cases. So when we took a step back and we looked at it, we realized that we needed a strategy. What would this strategy look like? We needed to figure out what it is that we were trying to do, look at the tools and see which one could really help us to deliver as much as possible across a broad spectrum with the least amount of resource consumption. So from a strategic intent perspective, we wanted to deliver a simple to use, yet powerful and comprehensive solution for infrastructure and application monitoring. And in order to do that, we need to unify the interface. So in order to avoid the confusion, we wanted everybody to be able to go to one place and consume alarms and performance data with very little effort. So they didn't have to go to Tool X for one thing, Tool Y for another thing, just trying to get as much consolidation as we possibly could. And that's one of the key elements behind our strategy, being able to do that consolidation, provide a modern user interface. And what that enables us to do, based on what we've seen, is that when you simplify it that way, people want to be engaged with you. So just like any other monitoring organization, we're delivering a service to the systems, the storage, the network teams. We want them to be able to engage with us, come and talk to us about what we're doing, and tell us how we can make improvements and actually engage and do the things that we're talking about. And like any other customer, we are dependent on product updates and integrations from CA. And also a key point is we needed to be able to engage with the subject matter experts on the application and infrastructure side, so we knew what is it that you want us to monitor, right? Tell us, help us. How do we make your life easier? When you get into work every day, what are the things that you look at to determine that your application is healthy, or your solution is healthy, or your infrastructure is healthy? And what that led to is what we call or generic deployment strategy for monitoring. And essentially, if you're in the UIM space, you've seen what they call the monitoring governance video. And this is essentially our summary of that, right? So the first thing that we do is run a document the requirements. What is it that we're trying to do? Right, so we look at it and we document what are the key performance indicators. How do we know when this application or this piece of infrastructure is up and healthy? And we do that by having conversations with the subject matter expert. Once we do that, we now know what we're trying to accomplish. The next step is we take the technology, which in this case is UIM. You know, it could be a CDM probe, it could be a SNMP collector probe, whatever the probe is, right? And we apply it and see which probes can be used to deliver the requirements. Once we do that, we take it and we build a baseline for monitoring, right? These are the metrics that we need, and we apply it to a small subset of the infrastructure. That way we can collect the metrics, see what's going on, see how they trend, see what happens when it's healthy, when it's not healthy, and then we use that to build, in many cases, a package or a template, depending on which probe you're dealing with, and we then apply it to our production environment. But before we apply it to our production environment and we enable alarms that require escalation, we send emails to the subject matter experts so that they can see what the behavior is, see how the difference is, and see what's going to happen when we actually put it into full production for escalation. That way, it's almost like a trial period that we go through to make sure that everything is okay. We don't actually end there when we do the implementation. We leave the lines of communication open. That way, if they decide, hey, you know what, we don't want this alarm anymore, or this metric is no longer providing value, or we need additional metrics, we can go back and repeat the process. That way, that engagement remains open, and we're always doing and improving the monitoring that we have in place. So what does that logical architecture look like? So essentially, on the outskirts of the slide, you can see all the different things that we monitor. You have the infrastructure services, you have the applications, whether it be synthetic transactions or Java or .NET applications. You have our network components, the switches, the firewalls, the load balancers. And you also have what many don't consider as something that you normally escalate, which is our workload automation systems. Right, so we have a lot of workload automation that's driven both on the distributed platform and on the mainframe platform. Now, in order to have a unified set of alarms where everybody can go to one place and see what's broken, we needed to take all of these things and bring them into CA Unified Infrastructure Management. From what you see on the slide, you'll notice that there are three different colors in terms of the lines. The yellow lines indicate integrations that we've built. They're custom integrations. The gray lines are integrations that we rely on CA for and CA provides for us. And then the pink lines or purple lines, depending on how you look at it, those are simply data collections, right? So for application performance management, we needed to be able to get the alarms out of application performance management into UIM. And then from UIM acts as our bridge to incident management. And for incident management, we use CA Cloud Service Management, right, to open incidents. And from there, we're able to escalate those incidents once they've been created. And we'll show you a little bit of that when we get to the demonstration. Going back into CA Application Performance Management, the application guys, they may or may not choose to want to look at Unified Infrastructure Management when they want to see how a particular piece of infrastructure is performing. So what we do is we rely on a APM gateway probe to actually send the data back into application performance management so that they can see CPU utilization, they can see memory utilization, whatever the case may be that they need to determine if their application is healthy and on healthy infrastructure. If you're an APM person, you could say, hey, we could do that with the EP agent probe, but then, you know, you're doing double work there. You have the EP agent doing one thing, and then you have UIM doing another thing. Well, the same thing. We just decided, hey, we want one thing doing it and just sharing data. Makes our life easy. From a network flow analysis perspective, CA provides a wonderful integration where we could actually take all the flow data, put that into CA Unified Infrastructure Management, and the network team can see not only the bandwidth utilization that's going on the network, but also what's causing that bandwidth utilization. Is it because we're downloading 1 million videos from YouTube, or is it that we're actually doing something that is relevant to the company's productivity and driving the business forward? From a CA Spectrum perspective, essentially we built an integration that relies on the SANM capability in Spectrum. What we do is we have the SANM capability dumped to a log file, and then we read the log file to push the alarms into CA Unified Infrastructure Management. And we have a callback from within the alarm where we can actually launch the impacted configuration item directly from the alarm, opening it in one click so we can see more details on the alarm. So things like if we're talking about an alarm for a switch going offline or a router going offline, we could also use that launch back to see what the symptom alarms were, as opposed to just the actual top-level device. Now, from a CA workload automation perspective, a lot of our business is actually driven by CA workload automation, so it's very, very critical that our CA7, CA workload automation, AutoSys Edition, and CA scheduler alarms end up in CA Unified Infrastructure Management so that we can create incidents and escalate those as well to make sure that any engagement we have with vendors via CA workload automation is addressed. So let's talk about some of the use cases that we've actually delivered with CA Unified Infrastructure Management. So Active Directory is obviously big in every company that I know of. Essentially, we wanted to make sure that it's online, it's performing, and we're able to not only do that, but also stimulate transactions to make sure it's performing. For those of you in the infrastructure management space that use CA products, EEM is Embedded Entitlements Manager is a big part of what we do. And one of the things that Embedded Entitlements Manager allows you to do is to connect to Active Directory and pull accounts out and validate them and certify them so that you can get authorization to your particular product. That's actually one of the things that we stimulate with the AD response probe. That way we know how long it takes to search for an account and to authenticate an account, just as a way that we can validate that our own applications that rely on EEM are actually functional. And we do other things. We know how long it takes, how many searches are going against the particular Active Directory server. We know how many NTLM authentications there are. We know how many Active Directory, how many Kerberos authentications there are. And all of this information was information that we were never able to provide to our Active Directory teams before. Now they have all of this information on a dashboard showing the health of the server, the health of the Active Directory components, all in one location that they can easily consume. So it makes it easy for them to identify problems and see trends in the behavior of Active Directory with very little effort on their part. Oh, and by the way, in doing so, we also replaced Microsoft System Center Operations Manager. From a database monitoring perspective, without databases, it's very difficult for you to provide application performance at any quality level. If the database doesn't perform, the application is not going to perform. So this was very critical for us, and we do this across SQL Server, Oracle DB, MySQL. All of those things are things that we cover today from a database monitoring perspective. We're able to not only do that, but we can also identify things like replication errors by using the Logmon probe to scrape the SQL Server log. And that's been able to help us to identify replication issues with www.ca.com, which has many locations across the globe, and we have to replicate the data content via the database to all of those different locations. So replication monitoring is very important to us from that perspective. We also needed to replace CA Insight Database Performance Management, and this monitoring of databases was actually one of the key use cases for the APM Gateway probe, in the sense that we needed to be able to share the data that we gathered from database monitoring with the APM team as well. Exchange monitoring is very big for us. Exchange for us is probably the most critical consumer application at CA. If for whatever reason we're not sure, whenever there's anything that goes wrong with Exchange, it's like the sky is falling. So it's very critical for us. We ensure that we have the dashboards, all the metrics are presented. We do email response. Typically today, most companies rely on third-party spam filtering providers. We actually use the email response probe to measure the performance of our spam filter provider and make sure that it's actually accessible and that it's actually functional, so that we can collect all of that data and view it so that we know when there are issues related to that. In this case as well, we also replaced System Center Operations Manager for mailbox server monitoring. That's now being done by UIM, and we'll show you that as one of the dashboards when we get to the actual demonstration. And one of the great things about this is it also provides an open view for the NOC to be able to see everything that's going on. And you'll see when we do the demonstration how the NOC will have access to all the different dashboards that are available to all the different teams so that they can see it. So what we try to do is, and you've seen this before, we have dashboards for Active Directory, for Exchange, and for storage devices. So across the storage platforms, we have Soleras, Clarions, NetApps, SVCs on the IBM side, XIVs, and the big popular EMC VMAX, which allows us to do the simple things. before in the past, what we used to have to rely on the company's EMC, for example. When you buy these big storage devices, you bring in your phone line and it dials out to tell the company when you're having an issue, and then they call us and tell us, you know, hey, you're having an issue with your storage device. That's no longer the case. We are now the ones detecting the problems before they even call us, so we have an insight into what's going on before things get to a critical level. So if we have a failed drive or we're filling up on storage, whatever the case might be, all of that information is now readily available to us. The NOC has that information available to them. And it also allows us to consolidate across the different platforms for storage monitoring, right? So we're talking about multiple vendors. You have EMC, you have IBM, you have NetApp, but we're using one solution, UIM, to do the monitoring across all of those different platforms. Virtualization monitoring, we make reference to Cisco UCS, VMware, an IBM Power VM, or as most people probably remember it, IBM P-Series. IBM P-Series is very big for us. We actually run our SAP application on the IBM Power VM platform using LPARs. So a big thing for us there is being able to tell where we are with the capacity of that particular system from a hosting perspective. So you can run, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 different LPARs on one host, but you want to make sure that, and make them, you know, be able to consume unlimited amounts of CPU on that host, but you need to be able to make sure that the host has enough resources to deal with that. And that's one of the things that we're able to do with unified infrastructure management. Similar situation, you know, when you talk about VMware, are we running out of space on the data store, which is going to put us at risk for all of those VMs running on that data store failing? Are we running out of memory on a host? Are we getting critical on CPU on a host that's running a critical VM? All of that information we're now able to find and provide via unified infrastructure management. User experience monitoring is one of the things that people, you know, we've talked a lot about. How do we measure, you know, the user experience? And one of the things that we've been able to do with the URL response probe, obviously we have an intranet, and everybody in the company has to be able to use that intranet. The intranet relies on our headquarters data center, but you have people who are going to come in from Singapore, Sydney, Santa Clara on the West Coast. Those locations are all very far away from where the actual servers are from the intranet, from an intranet perspective. So we need to be able to gauge and see what is their performance going to that intranet site. We're able to use the URL response to be able to capture that data. Not only that, we're also able to measure DNS response time. Obviously, without DNS functional in all of the different 6 critical locations that we talked about and the other 7 critical locations where we have development sites, if DNS doesn't function, nothing is going to work within the company. So that's one of the key focus areas for measuring user response time in our early stages. And obviously, we talked about being cloud first. With cloud first comes the idea that we want to be able to measure and capture the data. So key things that we needed to capture, we're going to rely on things like RDS and AWS. We're relying on the ability to capture database performance metrics. We need to be able to see things like CPU memory consumption. Do we need a bigger instance in RDS? Do we need a smaller instance? Are we throwing our money away? You could look at CloudWatch within AWS and get all of that data, but AWS only keeps the CloudWatch data for 2 weeks. What happens after those 2 weeks, right? So we have the AWS Pro being able to pull that data into UIM, single point of being able to view it. You don't have to give everybody access to CloudWatch. All they need to do is go into UIM and they're able to consume that data. It also gives us insight into what's going on with the elastic load balancers in AWS so that we can see how many healthy application instances are actually behind that load balancer so that we know if the applications are failing and need to actually be addressed so that the application doesn't suffer a total outage. So let's talk about integration. We showed on the original logical architecture diagram what our integrations look like. CA network flow analysis, we covered this a little bit in the sense that WAN circuits is a big part of our IT budget, and we need to make sure that we're using them for business purposes and we're using them effectively. There's no point in buying a big chunk of WAN circuit if you're only using a very small portion of it. You're giving away the company's money, not good value for stockholders, right, or us as employees. So we wanted to be able to make sure that using both network flow analysis and UIM to capture that data, we're able to do the analysis, not only see the utilization, but also see what was consuming that data. And that's the purpose of that integration. That was the business driver behind putting that integration in place. CA Spectrum continues to be a high value product for us. We consider Spectrum to be high value primarily because of what it does from a root cause analysis perspective. The concept where Spectrum is able to consolidate all of those alarms into one item at the top level and point us to where our focus should be from a failure analysis perspective is very helpful for us. And what we essentially do is we take that root cause alarm and we send that into UIM as the alarm that we open the ticket against. If we want to then look at the symptom alarms, we can then launch CA Spectrum from UIM by clicking a link that we embed into the alarm that we send. That will then launch one click to that particular device, and we can see the symptom alarms based on that. This is not something that CA provides in the 831 version of UIM that we run, but it is something that we built, and we understand that that's something that will come out of box in the future, and I'm not going to spill the beans on any more related to that. CA workload automation is something we mentioned is very critical to our business. We needed to be able to get the data in terms of when jobs fail, being able to generate incidents from that failure. And we also needed to be able to retire the things that we were doing with CA NSM. So for those of you that know and use CA NSM, it is a great event management platform. You're able to parse through a number of events. You can use ACE and you can capture and tie events together and do correlation, all of that great stuff. But that was the past end of life, and we needed to replace it. And that's what we've done with UIM by being able to essentially look at the auto-rep daemon logs so that we can capture that data and feed it as alarms into the CA UIM alarm console. And probably the most important integration of all is our integration into incident management. Like any other company, we have audit requirements. We have to be able to prove that when things go bad, we actually not only open an alarm, that alarm results in an incident, that incident is followed up, and that follow-up results in remediation of that alarm. This is especially the case as it relates to the systems that are in scope for SOX audits. And that covers not only systems, it covers workload automation jobs. So we have, if you're wondering why all of that stuff is all tied back up into UIM, that is the reason. And then UIM is also able to open the incidents in cloud service management via the NSD gateway probe. And some of the things that we do alarm enrichment to determine the importance of the device that we're going to open the ticket against, right? So we have what we call a tiering system. And essentially, whenever we find a production system that has an issue, we open an incident for it. For all the other systems that are not production, there are no alarms that are open, and we use alarm enrichment to figure out which ones are production or which ones are not. And we also use alarm enrichment to determine, how do I want to put this, what kind of ticket we open. So what class of ticket we open, what category gets opened, and all of that stuff is stuff that we do via work that we do in alarm enrichment. And the great thing with the combination of UIM and cloud service management is you have a direct integration. We can also launch from UIM via the ticket directly into CSM, so we can go directly to the ticket and they can view it as well. CA Application Performance Management is obviously a product that generates alarms. We need those alarms in UIM so that we can receive that data and process that data very effectively so that we can open alarms. And the idea behind that also is the sharing of the data with via APM Gateway so that it can be consumed on the dashboards that are in CA APM. So if the application team doesn't want to look at UIM, they can stay in the APM dashboards and view whether it be VMware performance metrics at the systems level. Even if they wanted, which we don't do today, but at the storage level, we can feed those via the APM gateway as well. And it also enables us to have, one central point where everything is being managed. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. All right, so we talked about having one view for the NOC, and these are all the different things that we make available to them just so that they can see across all these different areas what's going on, right? How do I determine, a big picture? This is our dashboard that we share with them. So if they wanted to find out, what's going on in VMAX storage, they have the ability to go there and see what the performance of the device is, what's trending up, what's trending flat, what's trending downwards. All that information is readily available to them, even to some extent what's going on from a capacity perspective. And what we're trying to do by having these dashboards open, not just to the NOC, but to really everyone across the different IT organizations, is transparency. We want to be transparent because the more eyes you have looking at things, the more ideas there are. How do we improve it? How do we make it better? How do we solve the problems faster? And that's what we're trying to do by sharing all of these different dashboards with all of these different teams. So on the system side, we showed you a picture of what our Active Directory environment looks like. We'll go into that a little bit more here, showing you the high-level performance of the environment, but also what the health of the environment looks like and what other types of metrics we're collecting. One of the big things that we were able to do is people always ask, when I make a change in Active Directory, how long does it take to replicate? We have a dashboard right here for that, and they can look at that and see exactly what's going on with that at any given point in time throughout the day and identify, for particular domain controllers, how long it's taking to actually get through that. Not only that, we keep track of, all the different metrics that matter to Active Directory. So including the health of what's going on. So right now I can tell that from a replication perspective, we're having an issue, which typically means that at least one domain controller is having an issue when we start having high replication partner counts. And we also keep track of the health of the actual Active Directory servers themselves. So how much CPU are they using, how much memory are they using, how long have they been online? All that information is tracked. The response time, we talked about how long does it take to actually look up an object in Active Directory. We keep track of how many authentications we're doing. We also keep track of even very basic data, how much disk space are we using on the Active Directory server. And we color code these things and change the colors based on, what the health of those things are. Exchange is normally a big thing that people want to see as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. The one thing I will tell you about this Exchange dashboard is I think I've broken every rule about dashboard creation. It has way too much data on it, so it takes a little bit of time to bring all of that data on the screen. But essentially what we use this for is we're looking for things that are not normal. All right, so we want to see, from a server CPU perspective, they should all be fairly similar. If we see one that's out of line, we know where to look. We look for DSN failures, which is very important to our Exchange team, so that they can track to see why they're failures. Unreachable queue length, poison queue length, those are very important from an Exchange monitoring perspective, and these lines will actually change. You'll notice that on the Exchange dashboard, we use a lot of lines as opposed to gauges and numbers. That was a preference from the Exchange team. They wanted to see more in line of trending as opposed to actual numbers. They wanted to see trends over a period of time rather than just a number which is just an instance of what's going on in any given point in time. And we do that pretty much across throughout this entire dashboard so that they have all of that information readily available for them at any given point in time. From an internal DNS perspective, we talked about that a little bit. Without DNS performing, nothing is going to function within a corporate environment. So we monitor not only the DNS resolution response time, but also the health of the appliance that provides the DNS service as well. So we know, how much CPU it's using, is it running out of disk space, how much memory is it using, but more importantly, how long does it take to do a lookup of a particular name or address on that DNS server. And that's the most important part. Where is that going? How is that trending? And like everybody else, most companies, the most popular site in most companies is Google, so we use Google as our measuring point. How long does it take to actually do a lookup of, www.google.com? And then finally, let's take a look at our databases. We'll use Oracle as an example. And what we've done here is essentially you'll notice the same trend across the dashboards. At the top level, we show the performance trends, and then we go into the more detail so that everybody can see, these critical performance metrics. Where are they? How are they performing? So that they can quickly look at it and determine the health of all of the different database components within the infrastructure. We got one guy here which is using a lot of CPU. It's a IBM Power VM instance, hence why it exceeds 100. And you could also see what's going on from a disk utilization perspective as well. And some of the custom things that we've done, we talked about escalation and creating tickets. So in order to make sure that we're not only creating these alarms, but we're also generating tickets and pushing those tickets through to the right people that they can address them, we also keep track of that throughout the life cycle of the escalation process. So from incident creation all the way to us delivering the alarm into an incident and delivering the alarm to a support person who's actually going to fix the problem. We keep track of all of that data right through the entire process, and we have a dashboard for that so the NOC can see if there are any issues with that process. Maintenance mode is actually, one of the big things. The last thing you want to do from a monitoring perspective is open an alarm for something that everybody knows is being fixed. And we keep track of that. Not only do we keep track of that, but we make it easy for them. So typically in UIM, how you put something in maintenance mode is you go to the maintenance tab and you drag and drop. Oops. I'll just log in here real quick so you can show. What we've done is we front-ended that maintenance mode enablement process. Let me just go back to that real quick. We front-ended that with process automation, with CA process automation. So rather than them having to go in and tell us and drag and drop what needs to be placed into maintenance, they simply tell us the change number. The change number has all the related configuration items against it. And when you tell us what that is, we take that information and we automatically put that into maintenance mode using this form. And that's done and driven by the UIM web services, which are actually very nice to use. We use a lot of Python against that, and that enables us to do a lot. Now, in terms of what the NOC uses from an alarm console perspective, we use USM, and you'll see when this comes up, and I'm probably spilling all of CA's business out in the open here, but just to give you a quick view of what we're looking at, all the devices that are impacted, the ticket numbers that we have for them, and the text of the alarm. We've enriched the alarm with the tier information and who it's assigned to. All of that information is readily available for anyone that wants to consume it. So we're going to end the screen sharing there, and we can go back to our presentation. And I think, Tammy, now would be a good time to open for questions.
At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad, and we will pause just one moment to compile the Q&A roster. And it looks like we do have a question. Caller, if you can please state your name, you do have an open line.
Yeah, hi, this is Steve Morton. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
So I had a question, well, a couple of questions. One was about the IBM XIV probe. It looked like in your presentation that you guys are using the IBM XIV probe. I don't see that in the archive. Is that in-house developed, or is that something available?
That is a good question. We're not actually using a CA-provided IBM XIV probe. Essentially what we've done is we've relied on the SNMP capabilities within the XIV, and we're using that to pull the data into UIM. And if you want me to share that with you, I'll happily do that. That won't be an issue.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing, although I wouldn't mind seeing your configs if you could provide them. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. I'll post them to the community.
Oh, great. And then my next question was just around alarm enrichment. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on how you're doing that, or what that process is looking like for you guys.
So we're doing 2 levels of alarm enrichment. One with the actual alarm enrichment probe. Mostly we use the alarm enrichment probe to tie the actual alarms from third-party devices like Spectrum, like CA APM, back to an actual device in UIM. Because if you don't do that, then the alarms and the color changes don't happen. So there's a lot of, I don't know how much you know about the tables, but we need to get the correct dev ID. And we need to match the dev ID. So we use alarm enrichment for that. And then we do an additional alarm enrichment using an auto operator profile that essentially goes out to a database. We use some Lua scripting to grab the tier information, the importance of the device that's impacted, and inject that into the alarm. So essentially, we rewrite that alarm within UIM. But that's done using some Lua scripting at the auto operator profile level.
And this is solely within the message that you're making that change?
We make changes to the message, but we also make changes to the custom fields. So you have 5 custom fields. The first one is, in our case, consumed by the ticket, but we also use it to collect some other pieces of information that we need to integrate correctly with CSM. So we grab what they call in CSM a CCTI, which is essentially the category that you want to open the ticket against, and also to grab the number of the device within CSM so we could tie it to a specific device in the CMDB of CSM. Make sense?
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Alquin, this is Jeremy. We've got a few questions on chat as well.
Okay, let me go ahead.
On the Active Directory dashboard, is that custom or out of the box?
It's a combination of both. So because we talk to our subject matter experts a lot, sometimes there's stuff that they want to see on a dashboard that is not provided by CA on the default unified dashboards. So what we do is we use the unified dashboards as a starting point, and we make modifications to them based on what we need. So essentially it's half and half, you'd say.
Are the custom dashboards we've created something that we can share with the community?
I see no reason why we could not do that. So as of now, my answer is yes. I'll go and double check, but it should be a yes.
We have a question about migration from NSM to UIM. How do we handle migrating complicated message record actions from NSM to UIM? Is it through NAS profiles or Lua scripts or pre-processing rules?
That's a good question. Very good question. So the way we've done that is because we've kind of separated ourselves from NSM a little bit, we've taken a little bit of a different approach to how we do things. We're not so much driven by the event as much as we are driven by the alarm. So what we've done is essentially at the probe level, we don't necessarily so much need to do the work there, but the probe level does some of that work, but most of the work that we have done in the past at the event management level in NSM is now being done as either a pre-processing rule or is being done as an auto operator profile. In some cases we need Lua scripts for it, in some cases we don't. But for the most part, it's being done in the NAS as either a pre-processing rule or as an auto operator rule. And in some cases, you don't need them at all. So we'll give you an example. In the NSM world, you know, when you get a critical alarm, you have to capture that alarm event, and then you have to do some work. So say, for example, that work is actually sending an email to someone. or running a script. In NAS, when you get that event to say there's a critical alarm and you want to send an email, all you need is to add the email gateway probe, capture the actual text, and you can send it quite easily from there. So some of the things that you used to have to do a lot of work in NSM are easier, and unfortunately some of them are a little bit harder. But I think it balances out in the end.
Alquin, can you talk about what aspects of the mainframe we're monitoring?
So the mainframe monitoring we're not doing with UIM yet. There was a release of some mainframe-specific items mid to late last year. We haven't started using them yet. So today we still rely on the mainframe to do its own monitoring with sysview, and then when there's a problem in sysview, well, sysview detects a performance problem, that information is fed into APM cross-enterprise management, and then that gets fed into UIM. For events on the mainframe, we still have OpsMVS on the mainframe, and OpsMVS is able to send SNMP traps to UIM. We capture those SNMP traps and convert those into alarms. But our intent is to go back and look at the probes on the mainframe side that allow us to do exactly what you just described, which is monitor the mainframe directly with UIM.
Can you talk about the complexity of the Spectrum UIM integration and how we did that?
It's at a high level, it's actually not that complex. I cannot say that it was originally done entirely by us because I borrowed some of the work from some of the work that services had done. Essentially what we're doing is when you create a SANM profile, you end up with a notifier. And what that notifier does is it writes a log file to a directory on the Spectrum server. And it writes essentially every alarm to that file. And then we use the logmon probe to scrape that. And by scraping that, we're able to take the events that are actually listed there and essentially send them into UIM. And it works essentially because we get both the new alarm, which is the minor, the major, the critical alarms, but it also sends us the clear alarms. So we're also able to clear it. And the key part of that is we actually rely on UIM's capability, the suppression key capability, to actually do that. So if we match the suppression key, we're able to do exactly that. I think before you go ahead and look at what we've done, I think when the presentations are given for the next UIM release, which is I think 8.4, you'll be pleasantly surprised by some of the things that CA has done there. So I don't want to talk too much about that right now without spilling the beans.
There's a question about implementation of SOI. Do you want to comment about that?
So SOI is something that is definitely something that we're looking at. We wanted, primarily for SOI, we want to be able to bring in SOI right in between the level where I showed you UIM going directly into CSM and put SOI right in between both of those. What we're looking to get out of SOI is service impact analysis, right? So for all of these alarms that we're generating, how do we know which services that we provide are being impacted? Today we do that via a custom integration we have with a homegrown solution that we've developed called Floodlight, which shows us we can, in context, launch the device and see which applications in our CMDB are impacted. But we believe that SOI will provide us a better ability to do that and make it easier for the NOC to see that. Like I said earlier, we have resource limitations just like everybody else does. So we prioritized UIM, we filled the gap with UIM, and now we have to go back and look to see how we can deliver the service impact analysis with SOI as that bridge.
Alquin, there was a question about trend lines and trend graphs in within the storage dashboard and capacity. Is there a way you could show that real quick? I know you've.
Hang on. Not 100% sure I follow the question. So these lines are actual performance metric data. You do have the ability somewhere in here. Oh, that wasn't it. Where do you do that again?
Yeah, I thought we had an example where there was, you know, a trend line out, you know, showing if we were going to, you know, exceed capacity at some point in the future.
Oh, the trend lines, those are typically shown in the metric overview. So if you look at the metric overview for a particular device, I think you're able to. I turned off most of the stuff here because I didn't want to clutter it with a lot of lines. But no, that's not it. Where is that again? I don't think I've put any. There is a way where you can enable trend lines, and I'll show a quick example of that. Here we go. Are there any other questions in the meantime while I pull this up?
Yes, there's still quite a few. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to them all on the Q&A here, but there's a question about how we.
This is the audio operator. We do have 2 questions on the telephone.
Let me get back to the trend line question, and we'll cover the other one. I'll go back and look through all of these questions and post a transcript on the community. I'll work with Melissa to do that. So if I've missed your question, don't feel like I've neglected you. I'll go back and catch that question. Let's take the lines, the questions on the line.
Our first question does come from the line of Michael Argani.
Hey, Alquin, can you hear me?
Hi, Mike. Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, do you use UIM to map out network and servers? You're not using Spectrum to do that, so that you could know if like a router's down and you know these 20 servers are down, that it's one event and not 21 separate events? You're using, is that how you're using it?
We still use Spectrum for that. No, we use Spectrum for that. And as far as we can tell, we will continue to use Spectrum for that.
So do you have to discover every server in both products?
We do have everything discovered in both products. The primary reason why they're discovered in UIM is UIM will actually do the CPU, the memory, the disk monitoring, but we also use UIM to put them in maintenance mode. So say, for example, we put something in UIM in maintenance mode, it actually suppresses the alarm that comes from Spectrum to say there's a problem.
Okay. And you're using a custom thing, you're not using the gateway. I know there's the new gateway coming out with UIM 8.4 and Spectrum 10, but you're using something different.
We're using something custom because they haven't released that yet, and we needed to get something done quickly. But we plan to switch to what they provided.
Okay, and then on an event on the same server, how are you differentiating between, like, let's say you have an application that's supported by some application team, or you got an OS-related event. How do you distinguish between, you know, notifying the right people or sending a ticket to the right team or an email or something?
Good question. So that's handled in our CMDB. Within our CMDB, we have, for each device, we have a list of what's called an escalation route. And it essentially tells us who to call based on which escalation route is matched in the CMDB. So say, for example, we get an alarm from CDM. We know we got to go to the systems team. If we get an alarm on that same device that an application service is down, we can actually go to the application team instead of the systems team. That's handled within the CMDB.
So you're referring to CMDB to figure out the logic on if it's a disk, go to the OS team. If it's this process or service, then go to the application team?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Can we take that one last question on the line?
They actually withdrew their question, and so we have no questions on the line.
Okay, good. We do have a lot still left coming through the Q&A panel. Hi, everyone. This is Melissa Potson, your community manager. Alquin, you did a really great job today. That's evident, obviously, in the number of people we have on the line and how many questions are coming in. If your question was not answered, we will work on answering that and posting the transcripts so everyone can benefit from those answers to the community. Of course, this event was recorded. They always are. We'll work on getting that posted to the community as well. If not today, then tomorrow. Just want to let you guys know, because I see some questions coming in about UIM 8.4. There is an event happening on February 18th. Just head on over to the IM community and get yourself registered for that. And if you have any interest in SOI, Service Operations Insight, we have office hours tomorrow, and we have 2 mini webcast events. They're tech events happening next week. So make sure you head over to the APM community if you have any interest in that. We really have a ton of events going on, so make sure you take a close look at the event calendar. This way you could see what's going on and what you're interested in. And that's it. So thank you very much for joining today. On behalf of myself and Melanie Giuliani, your community managers, we want to thank you for joining. We want to thank Alquin, obviously, for the great presentation, and Jeremy, thank you for handling all the questions. So everyone, have a great day. Thank you for joining. Take care now.
This does conclude your conference call for today. We do appreciate your participation, and you may now disconnect.